This is like,
So cool. I'm so excited. I like it. I'm gonna plan that. You guys need to. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're having too much fun, so we might as well get started here. First, I'd like to start with roll call. So to my left.
Oh.
Boom, boom, boom.
Mildred Olay, Area Director 3.
Hiroshiato, Director, District 5.
Jeffrey McAnalloy, Director, District 1.
Claire Wilson, Director, District 2.
Carol Gregory, Director, District 4.
Tammy Campbell, Superintendent.
Olivia Chong, Scholar Representative from Federal Way High School.
I'd like you to all stand while Todd Beamer High School JROTC presents the colors tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me? Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cheers. Color. Order. Color. Right. Face. Forward. Go. Forward. Mark.
Please be seated. I'd like to start tonight's meeting with the approval of the agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of April 24th, 2018 as submitted.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Looking for an approval for the required approvals agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve the required approvals agenda of April 24, 2018 as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And why most of you are probably here is for something called good news announcements. So what we're going to do is while Director Eto and Superintendent Campbell come down in front, we're going to start. And I believe, are going to start with Director McAnalloy.
Thank you to World Vision for the generous contribution of 15 smart monitors and 5,400 school supply kits. The technology will help prepare our scholars for the 21st century jobs, and the school supplies will help thousands of scholars be ready for school every day. We also express thanks to Christ of King Bible Fellowship of Federal Way, who was instrumental in this process. Would Quincy Walker, World Vision Site Manager, and Dr. Andre Sims, Christ of Church Senior Pastor, please come forward to be recognized? Schools can't do it alone, and we appreciate the support of the strategic plan Goal 2, Whole Child, Thriving, Confident, and Responsible Individuals. Thank you for all you do to support our scholars. Federal Public School scholars have placed well at the annual Washington State Science and Engineering Fair. Scholars, when I call your name, please come forward to be recognized. First place for project Fuel Cells, Hydrogen versus Methanol as an Alternative Energy Source, Katera Johnson. First place for the project Boron Neutron Capture Theory Irradiation, Elaine Pham. June Chong. Please come forward. Gaurav Gada. First place for the project of Poiser Geometry, Audrey Park. Milad Haderi. Second place for the project Boron Neutron Capture Therapy Neutron Moderation Adapter, Martin Lim. Richard Chung. Michelle Kim. Third place for the project Nested Faraday Cage for EMP Mitigation, Aiden Worcester, or Worcester, excuse me. Teachers and administrators are welcome to come forward at this time. This effort is in direct support of Strategic Plan Goal 3, active learners, engaged, empowered, critical thinkers. Congratulations, scholars. Is it?
Go Raiders. and Titans. Raiders and Titans. I apologize. Get my mascots right.
All right, next up, Uptown Square Early Learning Center Pre-K scholars are reading all-stars. You love this. Who read over 1,100 books with their families in the month of March. A lot of books. Uptown Square staff, when I call your names, please come forward to be recognized. Nicole McGill. Renita Hewlett. Suk Sim. Carrie Burks. April Austin. Daisy Govea. Chandrade McGarry. Scholars who are here to represent all Uptown Square students, when I call your names, please come forward with your parents to be recognized. Christian Warner. Nerisi Suazo. Oliver Morales. Adnan Ismail. Shelby Rodwell. Preston O'Dial. Mayumi Gadula. Beraha Jules Fergeron. Aiden Palacios Peralta. Catalea Ursua. And Adriana Ursua. Federal Way Public Schools is committed to all scholars being proficient readers, part of Goal 1 of our strategic plan. We are so proud of all of you. Read, read, read.
And we've already shaken. So come on this side too. Come over here, because I know some of you over here. Maybe narrow this frame a bit. Yep, there we go. There we go. Perfect. Then we'll squish together.
It's like a big family photo. Thank you all. Congratulations. Woo!
Advancing Leadership Youth is a leadership program where students learn about leadership skills, about the values of leaders, about leadership styles, and how to work with and inspire others to become leaders. Tonight, we are proud to announce the following students who were chosen by their Advancing Leadership Youth peers for the following awards. Scholars, when I call your name, please come forward to be recognized. Justin Filfrey, most intentional. Richard Carruthers, most relational. Joshua Collier, most transformational. With the Advancing Leadership Youth Executive Director, Lawrence Garrett, also come forward for the photo. Being part of Advancing Leadership Youth helps our scholars grow into thriving, confident, responsible individuals. It's goal 2 of our district strategic plan.
We are proud of our middle school scholars who participated in the all-state band, choir, and orchestra. These scholars auditioned and were selected to rehearse and perform with the other top student musicians under the direction of accomplished directors in their respective areas of music education. Please come forward when I call your name. Peyton Davis, Marvin Cowgaden, Caleb Choi, Cassidy Stanhope, Isamu Yune, Mia Rapp, Michael Kim, Abigail Adams, David Castro. Teachers and administrators are welcome to come forward at this time. This accomplishment is in direct support of Strategic Plan Goal 4, Content Area Competence. Oh, no. Bruno Furco?
We're going to double up, I think, is what we're saying.
I missed one. Is Bruno Furco here?
Be right here.
Okay.
And then you can kind of come up and like right there. Is that okay? Yes. Way to go.
Todd Beamer High School's dance team has placed third in state for hip hop and placed second in the championship small hip hop division at USA Dance Nationals in Anaheim, California. Scholars, when I call your name, please come forward to be recognized. Jaden Bullard, Genevieve Celestial, Ariana Diaz, Dala Zingle, Heather Jung, Hannah Kim, Elizabeth Lee, Destiny Oko Lee, Karen Smith, Kamal Washington, Eliza Yee. Keel Walker, thank you. Coaches and administrators are welcome to come forward at this time. You've got a principal coming.
Principal Marshall, come on down.
This effort is in direct support of Goal 3 of our strategic plan, active learners, engaged, empowered, critical thinkers. Congratulations, team, for this great accomplishment.
I would ask you to show me and Director Edson. We don't want to scare you. Way to go, Titan.
That's right. Yeah. All right, we're moving into a bit of a special piece tonight. We have good news announcements, but we also do something that's called a graduation, because there are many young scholars that are in programs that don't run the traditional 9 months, and when they're done and they graduate, they have a right and they have a reason to walk. And so tonight, I believe we're celebrating 3 of those scholars, and I'm going to ask Principal Ashley Barker to take it away.
Thank you so much, Director Wilson. My name's Ashley Barker. It's my absolute pleasure to be here tonight to honor, we have 3 graduates this evening. However, we'll just honor 1 tonight because life happens. So a little bit about our graduation. This is in alignment with Goal 5 of our strategic plan, persistence to graduation. We are so proud and excited for our graduates that we are recognizing one of them tonight. I'll read a little bit about our graduate, and then he'll come down and receive his diploma. So Timothy Andriuk went to TJ, but he didn't acquire enough credits in order to graduate. So we had the honor of serving him at Federal Way Open Doors. As part of our program, which is competency-based, Timothy shared with us that he was college ready, and he also persisted and pursued what career he wanted to go for. And by doing that, he was able to earn competency through our program, and tonight he's graduating. As part of that research, he decided to choose to become a facilities maintenance engineer, and he's now enrolled at Bates Technical College, working towards his degree. In fact, he's already earned 17 credits before getting his diploma tonight.
Awesome.
Timothy also speaks 3 languages and plays 2 instruments, and we had a chance to get to talk with his family tonight. So just, again, always changing our thinking about who completes and when, and how it's just so important that we honor all of our young people for their accomplishments. So Timothy, we'll let you come in just a moment.
Nicely done.
Congratulations. All right, next up on the agenda, Director Gregory, any legislative liaison updates?
No.
All right. Public comment is next up. I have a couple public comment, 3 tonight. When I call your name, please come up to the podium up there, and you have 3 minutes. And you'll see there's a green light, a yellow light, and a red light, so it'll give you an idea how things are going. Yellow light means you have a bit more time, red light means your 3 minutes are up. So first up is David Romano.
Good evening, Board President Wilson, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Campbell. How are you? Good. First of all, I'm speaking here on behalf of the Jennings family. I'm sure, without question, you're all aware who Wesley Jennings is. And I'll be the first to tell you, comedically and seriously, that my aunt can be overbearing, Lonnie Jennings, okay? A lot of the time, I understand why her arena to speak is limited in some cases, but you all understand what she's gone through, probably firsthand, as well as, just, well, first of all, I'd like to say that we respect immensely as a family what you have done for the family as far as the awards and a lot of the recognition. I don't really know what the protocol is as far as the public school system in Federal Way goes, in regards to letting her in some way, shape, or form walk either with his picture or a football jersey or something of that nature. But let me just voice my opinion and give you what I feel is a logical statement. When you leave this earth and you die, you don't take anything with you. You don't take your money. You don't take material objects. Your legacy is left by 2 things: how you treat people, because that's how people are going to remember you, and your children, or in this case, a child. So if any of you have children, especially if you have just one single child, I want you to empathize and think about what it would be like if that child was no longer here. For those of you that have multiple children, think about what it would be like if one of them were to be gone. In her case, I say one because the day Wesley died, her legacy died. She doesn't have anything else left. after she's gone, as far as a legacy is concerned, in the way that I'm describing a legacy. So I would implore you to just look into this matter, empathize, take a little bit of time, and just think about what it means to her. And it's kind of, in a way, a final hurrah, I guess. You know, I understand that there have been some disruptions and there's some other areas where, you know, she may have been overbearing, as I said before. And that, you know, and I empathize with you on that, okay? But think about this and just take a second. I want each of you to just take a few seconds and think about and empathize with our family, please. And I thank you graciously from the bottom of my heart for giving me a chance to speak. Thank you very much.
I want to thank you so much for sharing, and it's from your head and from your heart. I know that. And we are listening, so thank you. Next up is Lonnie Jennings.
Can we just switch the order slightly? I'm the first.
I would love to, are you Lynn?
Yes, ma'am.
Come on up, yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much. So good evening, Board President Wilson and members of the board and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I do really appreciate this opportunity. I live in the 30th District and am a friend of the family, but also I am running to be a PCO in this district, and I think that certain issues are very important when they affect our community. And death at any age is a difficult subject, whether it's a car accident, whether it's cancer, or whether it's a shooting victim. And the fact of the matter is, all over this country, not all of our students are making it to 18. Honoring those relationships is a key part of grieving. I can remember as far back as elementary school that schools offered a grief counselor if there was some type of trauma that all students were encouraged to see. And I think that's great, you know, that's awesome. But I also think it's important that high schools adopt a posthumous graduate policy. And so I have one question and then a few other comments. My question is, would Federal Way Public School District be willing to offer a policy that strictly speaks to posthumous students, not in relation to a policy specific for that? And then my other comment would be, I understand there's many ways that could be accomplished. It could be a family member walking. It could be similar to the ceremony that was done here tonight. It could even be just acknowledging that student's name during the process. But I think it's very important for students. You look back and you think about that. I remember in 9th grade, this person was here with us, and they're not anymore. And that's something that you're going to experience for the rest of your life. So that's very important, and it's a tool that we should use to teach our students how to go through that process. We should empower them that way. This is something that you see all over the country. Look at the kids in Parkland. They're marching all over. These kids ain't really kids. 3-year-olds are better on cell phones than me, okay? So we have to acknowledge their growth and their maturity and teach them how to act in these type of situations. And if they never see adults showing them the appropriate way, how are they supposed to know? Then you wonder why they have mental health issues that go undiagnosed, untreated. They never saw the proper way to just acknowledge what is just that moment of silence to say, you know, we hear you, and we understand, and we miss that person too. So I would just appreciate you guys taking the time to hear my statement. And unfortunately, I will be honest, I don't know the exact forum for getting an answer to that question. Is that something you guys can tell me?
Traditionally, we have public comment, and then oftentimes the superintendent will respond, and will also potentially respond at our board comments.
Okay.
And if there's a follow-up that is more appropriate than having this kind of a short conversation, we'll do that as well. And that's why we ask for your contact information as well.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you, and I
appreciate
appreciate, again, your time. Yeah.
I will integrate in my superintendent comments the conversations I've already had with Lonnie about this, as well as the principal and what we have planned to do in regards to this request.
All right, so Lonnie Jennings.
First of all, I'd like to say good evening to the board, President Wilson, and members of the board, and the superintendent, to Dr. Campbell. My name is Leilani Jennings. I was a single parent. I have only one child, Wesley Jennings. Wesley's my miracle child. It's a baby they said I would never have. I almost died bringing him into this world, as he almost died getting here. There's never been a day that didn't go by that I always instilled in him of all the things that he can do. Nothing's too big to reach for. Go to school, you can always learn, do this. We talked about all the way up till he can graduate. It was so important for him as it is for me. And for me to be offered nothing in his honor is unacceptable to me. There's going to be other parents that are going to come across this situation besides me, God forbid, and they're going to want some sort of legacy left behind for their child. He was too close to senior year to graduate. I understand he didn't have enough credits, but he had great grades. He was a good kid. He was very well known in the Federal Way area and only for good things, always helping everybody. I'm asking you to give me that same help. Let me honor my child. Let me do some sort of a walk for him. I bought his cap and his gown. I was even asked, why would I do something like that? I did that because he deserved it and he earned it. And I see nothing wrong with that. So I'm asking each and every one of you to take me into consideration of everything I have gone through and what I'm continue to go through. I have been in the Federal Way School District for over 20 years. This school district has been really good for my son for his learning. I'd recommend a lot of kids to be in this school district. But I'm just asking for one little thing to be able to do for my son. And if we can make this happen for him, that's something we could do for some other children down the road, because I guarantee you, the way the world's running out there, there's going to be another Wesley. And to no fault of his own, he was gunned down and robbed. I can't fix that. I have no control over that. This I want to try to fix. And it's very important to me that I get an answer from you guys. Walking down for somebody to hold his picture is not the same thing for me. That's not even close for me to explain to you to understand what it does for me, what it means to me. I want to be able to be a part of that. My son told me, Mom, you never went to your high school prom. I'm going to take you. I look forward to that. I won't get that. I won't get forward to grandbabies and grandchildren. I won't have that option. I won't even have the option of seeing my son grow up and get married, to go to college, to go into the military as he had planned. All that was taken away from me. So I'm asking you to give me just this one thing. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Olivia, if you don't mind, let's do a little flip and just have Superintendent Campbell give her comments now, and then we'll do the scholar reports right after that. Does that work? Okay, thank you.
So I want to start talking to you as a mom. Lonnie, I know when you and I talked, you didn't remember, but I came to your house. We sat on your sofa talking about Wesley the next day after this had happened. It was important to me as a mom and a superintendent to reach out to you personally because I have a son. And I remember you talking about him with such pride. I remember being speechless, not knowing exactly what to say to you. What I will tell you, and you and I have talked on the phone about this, that we have a scholar who's going to walk with Wesley's picture during the ceremony. But at the school where Wesley would have graduated, because he was in the 10th grade at the time this happened, there have been multiple scholars who have lost their life. And what we've done at those schools have done the ceremonies at the school site. And I've talked to the principal about the possibility of that. But all of those scholars were close to actually meeting the requirement. The actual graduation ceremony is about completion of the graduation requirements. If we start to merge those two things together, we would have a lot of scholars who would then say, how do we do that? And I say that to you not out of callousness, but after a long conversation. And so the compromise for us was to have a scholar walk across the stage with Wesley's picture to recognize him in that fashion. I would love to sit down and talk with you more about what we can do at the school to honor your baby boy, but it's bigger than me saying yes to this now, because there are multiple other children who've been in similar circumstances, but we've done this in a different way. So I want to reach out, and I'd love to sit down with you and the principal at Decatur to talk about what might be some other options. But we have made the compromise.
All right. Olivia?
This week at Federal Way High School, the second part of the new building has opened up. Now, a new gym, workout rooms, activity rooms for the leadership classes, the Air Force JROTC classroom, and the new locker rooms are now open at Fed. As the weather starts to get nicer, many Fed Head scholars are cutting through the courtyard to their classes, and it's starting to feel like the school is complete. The theater is the last piece missing. I know we as a school and a city have thanked voters for our new school, but I want to thank you again for a beautiful school providing our scholars with an amazing learning environment. At Thomas Jefferson High School, the speech and debate team hosted their annual Labathon, where speech and debate scholars go around the classrooms and showcase their speeches. This is a fundraiser, and from what I have heard, it was very successful, and the speech and debate team fundraised enough money to go to Florida to compete at nationals. The math team had 11 individuals who placed with high rankings. They are working hard to place high at nationals. TJ planned a multicultural spirit week so that scholars can represent where they came from as well. At Totem Middle School, some school classes put together a mock trial from the novel To Kill a Mockingbird so that scholars can better understand the novel and have fun while staying in character. I heard one scholar even came in a suit and did amazing. At Woodmont K-8 last Thursday, the PTA hosted Donuts with Dads, and this is an event where after school where, you guessed it, scholars and their dads eat donuts and bond. As I have said before, it is a privilege to read what scholars on the advisory has written about during their weeks. It's refreshing learning about what has happened in each school composed of unique scholars.
Thank you very much. So no, we're in the superintendent comments. It's not a back and forth conversation. And I know that Dr. Campbell will reach out and has asked you to reach out. Board members will give their comments and they may or may not respond. That's not the nature of the meeting itself. So we may comment in our board comments, but it's not a back and forth conversation. So you won't have, I don't believe, an answer to your request tonight, but I would ask you again to reach out, and Dr. Campbell will do the same to see if there's some kind of conversation we can have around what could be negotiated to make sure that the legacy that you're looking for happens.
I called you, if you recall, 2 weeks ago.
So what I'd like to do is make sure when you leave that you perhaps can give someone the best number to get a hold of you so we don't interrupt the meeting because we are on air and that's not how we're operating, but want to make sure that we have the correct numbers so that Dr. Campbell can reach out to you and continue the conversation. So we're going to move on to board comments, and I'm going to look to my left for Director Olay.
Thank you. The most exciting part of my position here is when I have the opportunity to actually visit a school. And so last week I had the opportunity to visit Lake Grove Elementary. I was impressed from the time I turned the corner and I observed the students who were on patrol. They were very attentive, they knew what they were supposed to do, and they were very alert. And I could observe that because I had to go around the block 2 or 3 times in order to figure out where I was supposed to be and where to park. Even more exciting was going into the building, meeting the principal, and then being able to go into the classrooms. And one of the classrooms that we visited was a kindergarten. and to be able to talk to the scholars there about what they were supposed to be learning and what they were doing. And they could confidently tell me that and show me their work and how orderly the opening of the school and the progression of the day took place. They knew where to put their things, they knew where to go and get the supplies. Also, of course, the teachers who used the resources of the classroom so very well, and the way the children were working in teams, and they were working very productively. We visited 2 other classrooms, and similar types of activities were going on. Ms. Jennings, before I go on for anything else, I do want to offer you my most compassionate sympathy over the loss of your son and what that means. And as the speaker before said, the loss of a legacy, because we look forward to that in our children, in our grandchildren, and all of that. So I do want you to know that as a board member. In addition, we have had other meetings. I've been, as I keep saying to you, it's a little over 6 months, and I feel like there's so much to learn, and there's so much that is going on in this district that I'm very proud of. I'm so proud of the way that the superintendent, the administration, the staff, the teachers, and everyone are really working hard to make a difference. And they're not just adding on what I call boutique programs, and I call boutique programs those little add-ons that make people feel good. But you cannot measure them in any way to see if they made impact on the scholars. And having impact on the scholars is the most important thing. And that's what gets me excited, and that's what I see going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Direct. So we're going to keep the meeting going, and I apologize for feeling like I'm interrupting you, but we're in the middle of a meeting, okay? I'm so sorry. Director Eto?
Well, I'd like to also offer my heartfelt sympathy for the loss of Wesley Jennings to the family and all the friends. I have the highest confidence in Dr. Campbell and her team to come to a resolution that I hope will be something that meets the needs of the family and also the students involved, because it truly does represent not only an emotional family issue, but also a situation where it involves a student body where a life lesson can possibly come of this. So I hope to see further progress in this dialogue that you're having. Relative to a school report, I've only been following the construction oversight meetings. Attended the oversight meeting on the 16th of April, and then a review committee or educational specification meeting on the 18th at Mirror Lake. And what I wanted to report was the deliberate, nested process that we have so that each group at every level, the teachers involved, the principals involved, have their thoughts fed into the broader process along with a discussion with the architects. Intergress, who was doing the one that I attended at Mirror Lake, they were doing a great job. Very insightful comments, good participation from everyone that was there. And so I'm very happy to see how well this process is working for the design and construction of the new schools.
Director McAnally?
So I'm going to go back a bit because we've had spring break and I was on a 2-week vacation, so I'm going to go back to March 31st where all of us gathered, or I should say 23 school districts that have policy governance gathered in Lacey for a 5-hour process to discuss policy governance and what the differences were and how things were working and not working and how we begin to look at things. And I can tell you that Federal Ways policy governance is being looked at by a lot of districts throughout the state as one to follow and to use. I'm quite proud of the work that this body has done over the last 4 years to bring us to where we are today. I also attended a couple of the district oversight meetings. The last one was yesterday. The process that we're going through, I really want to thank Dr. Campbell and her team to allow the input that has happened. It's something that has not ever happened prior to this, and I think that the input that is happening, getting it down to how things are laid out, how the building will look, how things should be aligned, from all perspectives, whether it be teacher, specialists, nurses, psychologists, counselors, principals, administrators, how the building should look, what it should look like, what's working, that's not working today, what we believe will work, how we look at all of that. I'm overwhelmed, and it is phenomenal with what we're doing. I'm very excited to see as we go through the next couple of months to where things will lay out. And so I just want to thank the team for what we're doing and how that looks. Did a school visit today at Sacagawea. I always enjoy being in the buildings and looking at where we're going and what we're doing and where there are still holes for us following our viable curriculums and the pieces that need to happen. We need to make sure that we have 100% of our teaching staff and our certificated staff truly following what is being mandated to make sure that every single scholar is being represented and feels that they are a safe and welcoming environment, and they're making sure that we're closing the gaps that we currently have, making sure that we're not segregating and separating those that in some ways I believe has been in the past. We have to continue to move forward in collective and make sure that we are representing all 23,000 students. And there are differences school by school, and it's work that still has to be done. But I know that Dr. Campbell and her team are working passionately to make sure those things happen, because we have to make sure that every single scholar is taken care of and given the best opportunity they can. Thank you.
Director Gregory.
Just a couple of things. I also was on the Sacagawea visit today, and in thinking about it, one of the things that's a reality about the change process that we're in is that every time we see something, we're frustrated that it isn't moving faster, and the reality of it is it can't. You know, we're doing as much as possible, as fast as possible, and so you know, for a school board member to go in knowing what we want versus what we have right now, everybody's trying hard, and it was obvious in that school that people are trying. And we just have to stay the course and make sure that we're doing everything humanly possible, as Jeffrey said, to make sure all of our students are successful. And one of the things that we're experiencing is a great deal of change in our schools as well. The students who come, the issues that get raised, and so while we're going through this academic effort, we're also looking at the human element and how do we meet the needs of all of our students. And so it's, as I left there today, and I've been involved with that school for many years, I had 3 grandchildren go through it. It's just fascinating to see how the change process also has to constantly change, because nothing stays the same while you're trying to create change. And so I'm very hopeful. I think our middle schools are our next real focus, because we pretty well, you know, have a direction in our elementaries, and I think we all agree with that, and I think we just keep plowing forward. I also just wanted to comment on the student recognition, the school board's recognition of students. I don't know what we call it. I get all our titles mixed up, but if you are a parent and haven't had the opportunity to attend one of those and your student is being recognized, please make the effort We only go 1 hour, and it's a very important opportunity for your student to really be recognized for the great work that they're doing. And then finally, I will say, I haven't been attending the oversight committees because I come from state government where DOC means Department of Corrections, and I couldn't figure out why I was getting these emails to go to meetings for the Department of Corrections. So I haven't attended, but I will now. But I might, yeah, only me. But I might say, I am particularly sensitive to this issue, and as Tammy knows, and I know we're already working on it, one of the things that's exciting about this district is that we respond very rapidly. And one day I was hunting for my cat, as I often do, and walked into the back area of my house, which abuts a green belt and then Wildwood Elementary, and I saw all these white ribbons on the trees, and I'm going, what is this? Well, of course, the first thing I did was blame the city, but because they were natural to me. They're up to something and they haven't told us. And so then I come back and realize, no, that's not the city, that's our new school. And so that has
Site work.
yeah, it's our site work. And so that has really caused us to realize how quickly, after you pass a bond, you've got to start the work with the community. And I'm real excited, as Jeffrey mentioned, all the work we're doing with the community and will be doing. And I walked over to my neighbors yesterday and was talking, and he said, you know, I called the city about those white ribbons out there. And I thought, oh, really? So anyway, for all of us that will be participating in this process at whatever level, we will reach out and let you know what's going on a pretty, what do I want to say, pretty regular basis, so that we build this school together in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. On the 18th, I had an opportunity to spend the evening at the In It Together graduation at Federal High School, and it was graduation of parents who had gone through the parent-led, parent-facilitated workshops on really how to be engaged and involved and understand how to support your scholars and really be active advocates and help other parents. And it's always an amazingly just a warm and welcoming and awesome evening, and families who feel so much like they have so much they want to give back, and this gives them the place and the opportunity and also the knowledge about how to give back. And everyone walks out, and children also were acknowledged across the stage because they also did leadership work while their families were doing the work as well. So a wonderful, wonderful evening. Director Gregory talked about the school board recognition event, and I just will share the next one coming up. It's Thursday, Better Way High School. And Mrs. Jennings isn't here, but I see that you are. And, you know, I was going to say that I've not lost a child. I have two. I can't even profess to feel like what it would be like to lose a child. I can't even. I can only imagine, and that doesn't even begin to address that issue. And all I can say is to please encourage and please continue to have the conversation about how it is that we can come to some kind of an option that will honor the legacy that she's looking for, and also allow graduation perhaps to operate as graduation, but it doesn't mean there is not other opportunity to celebrate this life and legacy of this young man. And in the 6.5 years that I've been in the district, and the many, many graduations over those 6 years, you know, we've had young men that have lost their lives. I've not been with any young women. And the tradition was to have a scholar carry a picture of a young person. And it is a day for them, and as much as parents, we want it, and she needs it for herself, this is also about the young people there, and want to make sure it fits into their day as well. And so I just encourage you as a friend and as a family member, and, you know, from my heart, There's just got to be a way where we can think about what it might look like so that it meets the needs and provides that opportunity for legacy that she and that Wesley deserves. So with that, yeah.
I'm sorry, I wanted to also comment on that. And I think I agree with what's been said about from all of our members, but I particularly am appreciative of your suggestion of a policy. Because this frequently, not frequently, but I can think right now of a young man that this year has lost his life. And we don't have a policy for how that recognition could be. And we have the opportunity to think about that with maybe our own scholars and see what they feel would also be a good way to do this, because it's not an unusual circumstance, but it's a terrible circumstance, and nobody wants to be trying to figure it out after the fact, and so that's our goal. Thank you.
And thank you, and thanks for staying on behalf of the family, and hopefully you can share at least some of the input. It's also on TV, so hopefully folks might want to look at it just to know that we did respond, and we have hearts. And it's hard when you sit up here as a person creating policy or whatever for 23,000 students, and when you have your own kids, it's very, very different because you're talking from your heart. So I so get that, and I so appreciate your time. Thanks. No, Tammy did make comments. Do you want to follow it? Okay.
So I just want to talk about a few things that have been happening. One, we had our scholar advisory today, and during that advisory period, we had the scholars to think about an option for the superintendent's advisory's recognition during graduation, as well as officers who are on the board. And our very own Olivia Chung generated an idea that she says, what about cords for scholars who are on the scholar advisory? Well, as I talked to the 40-some advisors I have who advise the superintendent, they came up with an idea that scholars who are on the superintendent's advisory would get 2 cord options. One, if they were on the superintendent's advisory for 1 year and they didn't miss more than 2 reports per year and they had pretty solid attendance, that would be 1 cord. If they had multiple years on the superintendent's advisory, they could get 2 cords. And if they were officers on the board, they'd get a medal. And so we think we've agreed with that. And so with this coming graduating class, we know for sure we'll have a couple of scholars walking across the stage with medals because they were advisors to the board, as well as the cords for any scholars moving forward who've met those other requirements. And so I tell you this to say we put problems in front of our scholars and they generate answers and we listen to them and they actually make it happen. So I was pretty impressed with that. I also attended the In It Together graduation and had an opportunity to address the group and really reminded the parents that were in that room that we're here to serve them and not the other way around, that it's our job to ensure that we have a system that serves scholars all across the district. I will also talk to you a little bit about, we've had some questions in the local newspaper, I know, related to standards-based grading, and we are working on right now a response that not only we put in the mirror, that we're going to send out to all of our parents. Ultimately, we know that the grade is the ultimate form of feedback. And research says that scholars don't care so much about the grade as they care about feedback. They want very specific, descriptive feedback accompanied by a symbol. That may be a letter, that may be a number, but it's that specific, descriptive feedback. It's in multiple research studies, and the effect size on it is indisputable. And so we're responding to that. We're also, I don't know if our community heard, but we had about 8 universities convene in March, and we asked these admissions officers, what do you think about our grading system? Do you think that our grading system in some way disadvantages our scholars from others? They said, nope. We take every district, because even districts that use A's and B's have different criteria and different cutoffs. They judge it by system, and what they said is the fact that we're looking at accuracy and it's looking at standards, that the rigor in our system is actually quite high, and that none of our scholars are going to be disadvantaged by our system. And you're going to see that in the write-up that we send out, and we're going to send that out also to our families, and I'm going to include some of the learning that came out of that convening in my Scholar Chronicle and other communications. Ultimately, standards-based grading is not something you do overnight. I think our lessons learned is to not to do this fast, but to do this right, to let our schools pilot the program, and then to learn from that. But the pilot happens as we roll it out, and I think we're going to get a better outcome as a result of that. We're being driven by research, best practices, and what our teachers are learning out in the field. I also learn a lot when we're out in schools, and this is what we're committing to our superintendent advisory next year. We're going to have them to do a worksite experience at Amazon. They're probably going to do one at Microsoft or American Airlines, at City Hall. We're going to take our scholars and break them up into 5 or 6 groups, and we're going to walk them through schools, and we're going to ask them to tell us what they think about how we can improve our schools. We're serious about Scholar Voice, and every year we're going to ramp it up so that we, in fact, do what one researcher said so best. She said, how long are we going to continue to build and rebuild systems without once consulting with the people they were intended to serve, our children? And we're going to continue to listen and partner with them. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much. That's exciting to hear. We are going to move right back to you, Executive Limitations 2, Scholars, Relationships, Academic Programs, and Conduct Discipline Presentation. Info only.
I'm going to walk down.
Okay.
And do this appropriately. Board President Wilson, members of the board, I'm going to talk to you about our executive limitations too. And before I do, what I want to do is contextualize what our executive limitations do. As you know from our policy governance training, executive limitations really provide the guide rails for the delegation you give to me as superintendent. And in it, I will outline not all the strategies because I would overwhelm you, and I've taken your feedback and narrowed this presentation down so that you can see what I would call our high leverage strategies that we're focused on. And as I share it, I will link it where it makes sense to some of our other ends outcomes. But ultimately, ELs are not about metrics. They're really about strategies that we're using to stay in compliance. That's why you'll see a list that describes the work that we're doing, that shows we're in compliance. And I've got some great news because the Center for Educational, no, it's not, it's Mary Jean Ryan's group. Yes, they shared some great data with us that I just learned about like 10 days ago that I want to share with the school board, because if I could have, I would have shared it at an ends report, but I've integrated it here, and I'll be honest, it doesn't really belong. So, it doesn't, but I want to brag a little bit, and I want to do it tonight. As you know, the 4 pillars in our strategic plan shape the house of our strategic plan. I'm not going to belabor those pillars, but here's what I want you to focus on. When you think about ELs, there are 4 elements within it. EL2A is about what are the relationships that we're establishing within the code of conduct for interacting with scholars, parents, and guardians, our scholar code of conduct. So that's 1. EL2B is about adopting and developing a rigorous standards-based academic program that enables all scholars to achieve the board's ends policies. Now, board members, when you hear EL2B, what strategy comes to mind? I'm just going to give you a pop quiz. What do you think? What's that acronym we always talk about? Guaranteed Bible. That's what this is all about. And SBGR, Standards-Based Grading and Reporting, sits right there. EL2C, develop and adopt culturally responsive preparatory programs that enable all scholars to achieve the board's end policies. And the data that I'm going to share with you actually shows how Federal Way is a lighthouse district according to CCER in this area. And then establishing a school environment that is safe, civil, and supportive, and I have to tell you, we can continue to get better at this. This is going to be where you, when you hear our budget plan, you're going to see efforts that we're putting in place to shore up and enhance our efforts in this particular EL. Well, when you see the list could be long because unlike the EL that Sally will share, she's only operating in finance and operation. Well, Carol, this particular EL hits Office of Equity, Communications, TFL, Office of the Superintendent. 5 or 6 departments converge around it so it can feel big. So, 2A, relationships with scholars, parents, guardians, and the public. So, look at that list. And here's what we always talk about. Schools can't do it alone. There's a lot of work happening here. A lot of work in EL2A. And what we know is we can't accomplish our ends if this is really the climate of the school district, if this isn't happening. So our Scholar Chronicle, and I think it was Director Wilson who mentioned about, or maybe it was Director Gregory who talked about a parent who saw the Scholar Chronicle and talked about the level of communication that's happening out in the community. The Scholar Chronicle is the way that we put out information. And the next Scholar Chronicle, not the one that's coming out next, but the one after that, we're going to hit standards-based grading and reporting. We're going to make sure every member of our community hear where we are in terms of our efforts there. Our Community Connect forums, for example, we're going to have one here on May the 8th. Is that right, Cassie? At Star Lake, where we're going to talk about our bond and our construction package specific to Star Lake and Totem. But we've had others where we've talked to the community about different areas, and I have to thank the school board for this. You wanted to be sure that we had ways to relate and connect to our owners around the work, and you generated great ideas. And I think during our retreat this summer, it'll be powerful to continue to generate more topics for those community connects. Good news announcements, we saw that, as well as you heard me talk about the Scholar Advisory to the Superintendent, the Because of You Awards. So the Because of You Awards, we just added that this year. It's a way to fill the buckets of our teachers and our staff and our office managers, bus drivers, to let them know that we're paying attention to the efforts that they're making every day to ensure our scholars are successful. And the last thing I'll talk about is our 24-hour response time. And that's one of the things that I press our schools as well as our team on, that no concern goes without us responding and getting back to folks. Now, sometimes when we get back to them, we don't say everything they want to hear, but we get back. I think an organization that doesn't know its value and its vision will say anything. I think an organization that knows its value and vision and cares about staff and community does that with compassion, but we still have to be clear about where we stand on issues. EL2B, Academic Program Standards and Practices. This is that GVC, the Guaranteed Viable Curriculum. And we've talked about that K-12 ELA adoption and implementation. From being out in schools, I can tell you the next big one will be our math adoption. I don't believe, and I've been starting to look at data, I want to thank Sammy Anderson, our Director of College and Career Readiness. She's actually shared some information about math with our team that I think really outlines what curricula are out there that really are powerful and aligned to standards. So over the next 6 to 12 months, you'll be hearing more about that. The curriculum guide work that we're doing, as well as we are working right now on an internal and external dashboard, meaning when our community and our parents go to the website, they're going to be able to see our progress towards our ends, and by extension, the goals in our strategic plan. And the board will also have login so you can start to see that data as well. Transparency, creating trust about our progress in our academic program and standards. And there's certainly the big thing that's coming up, which is our special education audit. And I will keep the board highlighted and updated on those efforts. EL2C, continued work on STEM, STEAM, and advanced programs. The STEM Expo, which was a powerful example of how we're engaging our scholars. When you think of STEM Expo, you should be thinking about, in the strategic plan, which goals come to mind? Which ones? 4, 3, 5. Yep. That STEM Expo is powerful in terms of expanding the vision and dreams that our scholars have for their futures. So these are the strategies that we're using. We're also doing continued work on cultural competency so that we know that teachers teach who they are and their experiences. And we have blind spots when we do that. And this training will allow us to continue to see and reach and teach all of our children so they reach their full potential. And we see where we may have bias and what I would just call the soft bigotry of low expectation, that we are constantly pushing against that. And our TFL department has been working on math acceleration progression. Let me turn that into everyday language. That simply means if you take this course in math, what's the next course? If you want to take an accelerated path, what's the next course? Right now, at our middle level, that's different for every one of our middle schools. We're now going to have, in the fall of 2018, a common progression that all of our schools will follow, which will allow for equity for our scholars. Here is the data that we just saw from the CCER data, and you may not be able to see this, but here's how Mary Jean and her team describe what's happening in Federal Way. Amongst the Puget Sound Region School District, Federal Way is a lighthouse district in terms of our equitable identification procedures and processes. So in other words, if you were to see our district demographics, we are seeing that same representation in our high cap and our advanced programs. And we're one of a few districts that's doing this, and we are a district that's leading the way in the entire Puget Sound region, and they're going to tell you more about it at a future board work study. So that's hard evidence that when we think about closing gaps, that it's actually showing up in the data. EL2D, which is around behavior and discipline, we've got a lot of work to do. I had a conversation with several board members about this, and I think when we talk about how we want to lower the number of suspensions, the thought is that somehow we're lowering our expectations, and we're not. We have to have learning environments that are safe. We cannot have scholars disrupting those environments and not addressing it, holding high expectations, talking to their families, talking to scholars, and finding ways to quickly reintroduce them back into those learning environments. In this particular EL, that's the focus that you're going to hear us talking about. Continuing our work around second steps, our Mentor and Me mentoring program is important. Ensuring all of our staff are HIB trained. Ensuring all of our schools are implementing PBIS. And looking at that at the district level and doing what we call implementation walks. You've heard me talk about the investment that we're going to make around behavior specialists, as well as training for our new teachers. We've been thinking about this as a cabinet, and we've got a plan for how every new teacher who's onboarded, we're going to be sure that we're engaged in the kind of training that helps them to be successful in classroom management. But more importantly, not just management, but cultures that it's about the learning as opposed to being turned on its head and scholar misbehavior is driving those classrooms. And as someone who subbed in a classroom recently, I can tell you, I know that's not an easy task. So, EL2, all about the big ideas that I shared, and here are just a few strategies that we're utilizing to ensure we're in compliance. Do you have any questions?
Directors, anybody?
No questions, just a comment, since we discussed this previously in a work study. When it comes to standards-based grading, we had talked about the need for parents also, not only that the students have the feedback, but the parents understand the path that's required for the student to get what they believe is an appropriate grade, because we did have a public comment a couple of board meetings ago where there was a complete disconnect in that regard, and that's an important point. The other thing was that when we talk about rights and responsibility, that is the discipline code, and so nobody should walk away believing we don't have a discipline code.
Thank you, Director Eto.
Anyone else? I'm going to have you stay, if not, and have you go right into EL3.
Actually,
Or
I
no?
won't stay. Sally will do that because that
Alrighty.
would be a debacle if I were to stay.
Would you like to introduce it from there then?
Yes.
Okay.
I will have our Chief Finance Officer, Sally McLean, come up and share with you. And here's what I will tell you, and you're right about this, Director Wilson, in terms of me providing the framework. We are working really hard, come beside me here, to ensure we have safeguards to be sure that our financial standing is sound and solid. So that when we're talking and presenting information to you as a school board, you feel sound, you feel like we have got the kind of precautionary measures in place to be sure that Federal Way Public Schools is in good stead. And I think you're going to see evidence of that when Chief Finance Officer Sally McLean shares those strategies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Good evening, President Wilson, members of the board. It is my pleasure this evening to share with you our report on Executive Limitation 3. And Executive Limitation 3 is related to the financial and asset protection of the district. So briefly tonight, I'll outline the interpretation and rationale for the 5 major components of the EL3, with specifically highlighting our current practices, focusing on our fund balance strategies, and as Dr. Campbell pointed out, our systems of checks and balances, so you can be assured that our financial foundation will continue to support the pillars and the work of the strategic plan. Specifically, the executive limitation policies focus on ensuring the board's priorities established within the district's ends policies and the superintendent's strategic plan are supported through the administration of prudent financial planning and administration, again, while maintaining the long-term financial health of the district so that we can support changing outcomes for our scholars. These are the 5 components of Executive Limitation 3. EL3A is around financial and budget planning. EL3B is around budget execution or accounting for the plan. EL3C addresses our financial condition. EL3D talks about asset and facilities protection with specific emphasis around risk management and public records. And EL3E is focused on real property and facilities protection. And again, this evening, we're going to be talking specifically around our checks and balances in EL3B and our overall financial condition. So in order to ensure that we are executing the budget within the plan, there is a regular system of both internal and external checks and balances. And I will provide you with 2 slides, one which focuses on the internal checks and balances and one that focuses on the external checks and balances. So some of the things we do, and this is not an exhaustive list, to ensure that our internal financial health, these are things we do to ensure our long-term financial health and things that we do internally, is we monitor monthly our reported student enrollment against budgeted enrollment. And that is pivotal for any school district in the state because almost every single revenue stream we receive is based on the number of students that we're serving, whether that's on an average headcount basis or an average full-time equivalency. When you build a budget, you make assumptions about your enrollment trends, and it's important to be checking those on a monthly basis. And indeed, there are 2 things that are, I think, that Federal Way does specifically under the leadership of Dr. Campbell. We have a large team of people that convene the first 7 to 10 days of school to including Deputy Superintendent Dr. Pfeiffer, our Human Resources Chief Officer David Brower, our Learning Improvement Officers, and others assemble every single day in the afternoon to review the number of students that have have shown up for school, so we can start making staffing adjustments in those first 2 weeks if necessary. We obviously, when I could do the pop quiz, but when 85 cents out of every dollar is spent on people, which is a common percentage across school districts in the state of Washington, maintaining your position control is key. If you're hiring staff beyond what was budgeted, we are adamant that we're looking at that either in context of the fact that we have a changing student enrollment, perhaps in our English language learner population that's requiring some additional staffing, or that we're making accommodations and accounting for how we're going to absorb that cost on an ongoing basis. So again, maintaining that position control is pivotal to maintaining our financial health. We have the business office, in conjunction with Teaching for Learning, has regular meetings with key departments to ensure that enrollment revenues and program expenditures are within expectations. This includes meetings with our career and technical education programs, our multilingual or ELL departments, our special education department, and also working with Title and LAP. And then to some extent, some of our unique programs, such as Internet Academy and Open Doors, making sure that we're monitoring that enrollment revenue against program expenditures. We also produce monthly financial statements, making observations and notes about any individual budget that looks like maybe it's spending more than we were expecting, so that's another internal check and balance. And then we do ongoing fund balance projections to ensure that our overall spending is either running less than, or at least not more than, what we had budgeted and planned for. Some of the external financial monitoring includes our annual financial audits by the State Auditor's Office. Part of that financial audit also looks at internal controls and program compliance. We periodically have independent enrollment projections verified by an outside demographer, statistician, and we just recently received our current enrollment projection, and I'm pleased to report that the basis of building next year's budget is just slightly below what the outside demographer projected for our enrollment for last year. We know we're going to have the opportunity to reaffirm our financial health with financial ratings that will occur with the upcoming bond sale from both Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And then we, of course, regularly benchmark against other districts. Some of that work you see done by CCER, but we also do our own benchmarking against the CCER districts, against districts of our like size, and in other ways that make those demographic crosswalks to ensure that our costs are looking comparable or better than our benchmark districts. The other piece of the 5 components of the Executive Limitation 3 around financial and asset protection that we really want to talk about tonight is our overall financial condition. And so part of this particular EL requires us the board and the superintendent to monitor ending fund balances and approve any borrowing. So for the 2016-17 fiscal year, which ended on August 31st of 2017, with books officially closed by about the end of October, that indicates full compliance with Administrative Policy 6024, which requires a committed fund balance between 3% and 5%. Indeed, we were at the full 5% in full compliance with that. As you'll recall, for 2017-18, the superintendent recommended and the board approved a budget that has an uncommitted fund balance that falls slightly below that 3% floor. And I'll show you a picture of that. This is a graph I'm sure you're all familiar with, and you can see over the last several years there have been multiple occasions where we have budgeted below 2% and have actually closed our books above in compliance between the 3% and 5%. But I just want to emphasize for all of us as a reminder that with this particular year, for 2017-18, we adopted a budget that makes a strategic one-time use of $16,150,000 to be invested in salaries in order to support Pillar 3, which is our efforts to continue to attract and retain and develop the staff. So we made that investment for 2 reasons, because obviously you can't continue to spend one-time money on ongoing costs, right? But we knew that based on the original legislative action related to McCleary that was adopted in House Bill 2242 not quite a year ago, right, June 30th of 2017, and now more recently amended by Senate Bill 6320. But we knew a year ago that our phased-in allocations of new McCleary funding would, as the state was reducing our over-reliance on local levies, because remember, our local levy pays mostly for people, that new funding would allow us to offset this one-time use of fund balance. And as we have discussed, we are certainly spending more money than we're receiving this year, not unexpectedly. We're not spending quite as much as we would have expected. And that concludes my presentation this evening.
Director McAnally, do you have a question?
So I just want to look forward to the 18-19 budget and all the conversations that's happening, because our certificated staff believes that there is a large pool of $1 billion coming forward that's been spread over the 295 districts, and that raises can be substantially higher than what has been discussed previously. And I know that the legislature has set that it's capped at 3.1%. I just want to make sure as we look at 18-19 budget that we truly bring our fund balance back to that, and that that's what we're driving towards, is that we're not going to look at another large outlay of money, because it made me nervous to drop below that last time. So just want to make sure that that's part of what's on course, and that we're really looking at the 3.1 as we go into negotiations.
Certainly, Dr. Campbell is very consistent on her position about reinforcing and restoring that fund balance to be within our administrative policy 6024.
And I think that came up
Thank
in
you.
a bit in our conversation during our work study too, as we
Yeah, and I missed
explored it
that,
a little
so,
bit more,
yeah,
and
okay,
you weren't there, but
perfect.
yeah, we
Thank
did
you.
talk about that, because we do know we've got, folks, we've had issues before, and we don't want to be in a position where we can't maintain and sustain what we've invested so far.
Thank you, great presentation.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Director Eto?
Just to add a couple of takeaways from the work study. I remember hearing that we had moved some of the offices together so that the information was more accessible, so that improved our accountability and monitoring ability. And I also heard that we were benchmarking ourselves against other districts, and that we continue to be a relatively low overhead district.
That is
From
correct.
that benchmarking study. And so if anyone is concerned about the level of financial accountability that we have, I think everyone should rest assured that we're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board?
I'd just like to thank Sally. I mean, she has done an incredible job year over year, year after year, to ensure that we're safe, we're in a good financial situation, and I have complete trust in her ability to continue to do that. And what I appreciate is that she gets the teaching for learning side and what we're trying to accomplish with our strategic plan. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. I appreciate that.
We appreciate you as well, Sally.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very much.
All right, we are just a few more items before, just to let people know we're moving to executive session. But before we do that, we have a couple resolutions, and I'm going to start with Director McAnally with our first one.
Great. So Resolution 2018-03, Scholar-Led Conferences Waiver. A resolution of the Board of Directors of Federal Way Public Schools District Number 210, requesting a waiver of Federal Way Public Schools grades K-12 for a minimum of 180-day requirement for the 2018-19 and 2019-20 school years under WAC 180-18050. Whereas the Federal Way School District believes that scholars were able to articulate their strengths and areas needing focus have a greater chance to achieve their learning goals. And whereas the scholars' contact hours remain over the state-required time, maintaining on average 1,027 hours, grades 1 through 12. And whereas the agreement by and between Federal Way School District and the Federal Way Education Association supports parent-scholar-teacher conferences, commonly referred to as scholar-led conferences. And whereas Goal 2 of the district strategic plan focuses on high level of participation in scholar-led conferences, and Goal 1 and 4 of the strategic plan emphasizing high-quality teaching, learning, and scholar achievement. And whereas the Federal Way School District is seeking a waiver from the basic education requirement of a 180-day school year solely for the purposes of parent-teacher conferences. Now therefore be it resolved that Federal Way Public Schools District Number 210, Board of Directors requesting the minimum of 100-day school year requirement be waived for Federal Way school districts to allow for 4 non-school scholar days, which include 2 full days in November 2018 and 2 full days in March 2019 for the 2018-19 school year, and 2 full days November 2019 and 2 full days March 2020 for the 2019-20 school year. During this time, scholars will attend school with their parent or adult representative to meet with staff for a parent-teacher conference which improves scholar achievement, scholar relationships, and scholar activities.
So I am looking for a motion to accept the resolution.
I move that.
Okay, go ahead.
I move that the Board of Education approve Resolution 2018-03, student-led conferences waiver as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think this goes back to the comment earlier about how students need to have feedback to succeed, and I think it also connects to the need for parents to be able to understand where their child is at so that they can assist at home. So I think the idea of this effect size being large applies here.
And I do believe that the next step, we have to adopt the resolution, and then it's submitted to the State Board of Education for approval. So this is one step in our process, and so the resolution from us comes first, and then it'll be submitted for approval to the State Board. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a couple
Okay.
comments. So I too believe that, some changes we made a couple of years ago with progress reports, that this is more important than ever. It is the midpoint to discuss with scholars and their parents to know exactly where they are on for track by semester grades. And I hope that we can somehow work through, as we go with negotiations with FWEA, that we bring those progress reports back and that we do that. And secondly, if we remember 2 years ago that we actually asked for 8 days. So now we're going to have 4 more days of face school time for scholars to make sure that we're doing it. So we're going from 172 to 176 days. And I'm elated that we're moving in that direction. So thank you.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Any more discussion?
Just really quickly, I just want to say one of the things that we're going to be doing is talking about what student conferences look like. We're going to continue to clarify that. And at the last conferences, we made sure that every scholar had the same information. So they received a standards report, no matter the school. We're becoming more consistent about what every scholar receives. And we're going to continue to push out more information to families. And we don't necessarily, that's not a function of negotiations. It's already in contract language that we can do that. And we're going to continue to do that.
And I would just reiterate that we do something around Parent View.
Yes.
For apps pieces too, for the access.
All right, so we have a motion and we have a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that resolution, 2018-03 Scholar Ed Conferences waiver for 2018 to 2020 passes. Next up, Director Eto.
This is Resolution 2018-04, Sexual Assault Awareness Month. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Federal Way Public School District Number 210 proclaiming April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month was first observed by the United States in April 2001 to raise awareness about sexual assault as well as ways to prevent sexual violence and support survivors, and whereas today millions of people are sexually assaulted and are too often left with little support and few solutions, and whereas 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will be affected by sexual assault in their lifetime, and whereas efforts to change belief systems and practices that perpetuate sexual violence, especially in targeted vulnerable populations, require the participation of the entire community, and whereas we acknowledge that women experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity face unique challenges that affect their well-being, health, and families, and whereas we reject violence in all its forms, and especially that which targets women in the home, on the streets, in the workplace, in media, and on the internet, now therefore be it resolved that the Federal Way Public School District Number 210 Board of Directors proclaim April 2018 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
I am looking for a motion to accept the resolution.
I move that the Board of Education approve Resolution 2018-04 proclaiming April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month as submitted.
Is there a
Sorry.
second to that motion? Awesome. Any discussion? I want to thank Director Eto for bringing it forward and suggesting that we do a resolution as a board. I think it's critically important. And so I just want to thank you publicly for bringing that to our attention. All right. No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you so much. Next on our agenda is district calendar approval for 2018-2020, and we will be taking action, and I will say I'm thrilled. I've been getting questions from people and emails asking when our calendars are
Yeah.
going to be ready, so I'm happy to say now.
So here's what I want to tell you that our system and our staff have learned. We should have our calendar to you probably no later than January, and the next time that's what we're going to do. This was too late. Having said that, as you know, there is a negotiated process that we go through to get feedback from a small subcommittee and then from the larger school staff to select the calendar that works best. And our Chief of HR, David Brower, will share that information with you.
Thank you. Good evening, President Wilson, directors, Superintendent Dr. Campbell. As Dr. Campbell shared, we do have a rigorous process by which we negotiate the calendar. We recognize the calendar is a critical piece to instructing all of our scholars and helping them achieve their goals. The process for calendar development is there before you. As Dr. Campbell indicated, we do have a large representative team that works on and makes proposals following those guidelines with instruction first and foremost at the heart of all the calendar development. We also make sure that after we've developed a process, or a proposal rather, we send survey to all staff. We receive nearly 900 responses and hundreds of comments, so we finalize the proposal, which is summarized here. You'll see that it is similar to previous calendars. We'll be starting after Labor Day and ending about the second week of June, and make sure that we've preserved our student-led conferences and our early dismissals. Try to be as succinct as possible with that information before you. If you have any questions, I would gladly entertain that.
No, and we do have calendars in our packets, just in case people think that we could see that and absorb that and everything else. So again, we've looked at this, and so I guess I'm asking if there's any questions. So Director McAnally.
Yes, I got a couple questions. So on the snow days, is that going to be midwinter break on the 15th?
Yes.
All right, so we're doing 1 day for midwinter break instead of 2 and combining it with President's Day?
We still have, there's still a 4-day weekend.
Right.
So instead of doing Monday, Tuesday, it's Friday, Monday, with Friday being able to be used as a snow day. If, as statistically has happened, those snow days happened before February, which has happened more than half the time in the last 10 years.
Right, my second question is on early dismissal before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Is that early dismissal going to look more like an early release day, or is it still cut down considerably? Is that contractually based?
So that is, it has been a 2-hour release, and so it's a slightly different time frame than our early dismissals, but we'll be using that same time frame that we have as in the past. So it's not as much of an early dismissal as the last day of school, but it is an early dismissal.
So how many hours are the students?
I believe it's 2 hours early, so instead of 90-minute early
So
release.
they're in class for 4 hours?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. And if there's no further questions from the board, all those in favor?
We haven't made a
I don't
motion
think
yet.
Oh,
Yeah,
have we
we
not
don't
made a
have a
motion?
motion.
Oh, I'm just ahead of things. Okay.
I move that
guess
the Board of
I-
Education
thank you.
approve the 2018-2020 calendar, district calendars as submitted.
Looking for a second.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Motion passes. The board will, I think we're at that place now. So what we will be doing is recess to a closed executive session per RCW 42.30.110B to discuss real estate matters with no action to follow, and we'll come back and close the meeting when we're done with executive session.
We're going back into that back area.